بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Let us have the sincere intention لله تعالى. Today we are going to finish the section on the sense of the tongue, inshallah. So the author started off by saying to play the flute, which is a sin of the tongue. Explanation. So there are different types of flutes. Some are made of wood, other made out of metal. They're used for weddings or in the movies, and even the shepherds, they use flutes. So judging such an instrument to be haram is a correct statement because there are some judgments in the Shafi'i and Hanafi that it is not haram to play the flute. And this is not true because the Prophet ﷺ explicitly mentioned that this is prohibited. So he explained, so he explicitly said what contradicts the saying of some Shafi'is and Hanafis. On top of that, the heads, the actual Shafi'i and Hanafi, and the top scholars of those two madhabs mentioned that it's prohibited to play these instruments. So the judgment that playing these instruments is prohibited. It's not known by necessity among the rules of the religion. It's not known by necessity among the Muslims that this is one of the rules of the religion. So if someone is confused about it, they didn't know about it, we teach them. The author said to refrain from commanding the obligatory and from forbidding the unlawful without an excuse. So explanation. This means when it is a personal obligation upon one to order a ma'ruf or forbid the unlawfulness, a munkar, and one does not do it, then one is sinful. And in other times, doing that would be a communal obligation. If some people fulfill this obligation, the others would not be sinful. Sometimes there will be an excuse that prevents one from forbidding al-munkar, and sometimes there will be an excuse for him not to do that. That is, if he doesn't not do it, he is not sinful for leaving out, for leaving this obligation out. Sometimes, if someone commands obligatory or commands someone to not do an action, he will be killed, or one of his organs will be cut off, or his money will be taken from him. In such a case, this person is excused from this obligation. And some people, they are very strong in relying on Allah to the point that they feel that there is a benefit from ordering al-ma'ruf, that is doing the good deeds, commanding the obligations, which are what we are teaching in this course, and forbidding al-munkar. Again, this is what we teach in this course. So they have such a reliance on Allah that they do not abstain from doing that, even if they fear for themselves a consequence such as being killed or put in jail or money's being taken and the like. So some examples for that are some of the great imams. Imam Malik, for example, was whipped very strong and he did not leave out this obligation. Imam Abu Hanifa, he died in prison and he died because he was whipped also. And he did not leave out ordering al-ma'ruf. Imam Ahmad, sorry, 3 consecutive rulers, they took turn in harming him in prison by beating him and other things, and he did not leave out ordering al-ma'ruf. So the biggest students of Imam Shafi'i, he died while imprisoned with chains in his feet, and he did not leave out ordering al-ma'ruf and forbidding al-munkar. So Imam al-Shafi'i, before dying, he told him, that the student, that you will die while you're in chains. So he didn't have this knowledge, like obviously what I'm saying here is that Allah gave Imam Shafi'i this knowledge before he died. But there are conditions in the religion to forbid the munkar. So among the conditions to forbid al munkar is for this unlawful matter to be judged as unlawful by consensus. So all 4 scholars have to agree. Or that the one who's doing the sin believes that it is forbidden. Okay, so for example, if a man covers his thigh in front of the people, if this person follows the school of Shafi'i or Abu Hanifa, that is, he follows one of the imams who say it's prohibited for him to uncover his thigh in front of the people, then you are entitled to forbid him or basically to tell him that what you're doing is haram. So leave this out. Go cover up. Don't do it, basically. You're reminding him. And now, if he's following the school of imams who say that it's permissible to do that, then it's not correct for you. It's you are not entitled to tell him you are sinful by doing that. Because the great mujtahids did not all agree on this issue. Some said it was permissible, and others said it is not. If the top scholars said that, then you are not entitled to say that it's haram. You can advise him to do what is better, such as if you cover your thigh, this will be better. This is permissible, but the teacher here is saying, who are you to order him to cover his thigh when another school has told him, which is a mujtahid, by the way, they have knowledge and experience, told him, no, it's okay for you to uncover. That is if he follows a different madhab. If he follows the same madhab, then it will be as a reminder. So if Imam Shafi'i and Imam Abu Hanifa, then it's a reminder and it's an obligation on him because that's the schools that he follows. So this is one condition, and I hope that makes sense. The other condition is for one not to believe by forbidding the harm and committing the obligations that this would lead to a greater sin, to a sin which is more enormous. For example, if someone is cussing another person unjustly, this is haram. You cannot prevent this person from doing that, and you know that if you tell him, don't do that, he is going to kill this person. Or, like, for example, he's going to commit blasphemy. In this case, telling him, don't do that, will lead to a sin which is more enormous. In this case, you don't say anything. It's prohibited, actually, for you to do this in this case. Another example is if someone is saying bad statements and you know that if you tell him don't say that, he's going to curse Allah or the Prophet. Again, this is blasphemy. In this case, you do not tell him because this would lead to a greater sin, to a sin which is more enormous than cussing someone out. And this is something a lot of people don't pay attention to. There needs to be wisdom, and you need to know the person that you are talking to. So a person might do something which he thinks by that he's ordering al-ma'ruf, right? Or forbidding al-munkar. And as a result, a big harm occurs to the Muslims because of that. So one needs to be careful about this issue, and wisdom and the knowledge of this person is needed, of the situation is also needed. So the teacher said, let me draw your attention to something here. You feel a harm from saying something. Okay, let's say that you're in a position and condition where you are accused for not saying it. This does not mean that you are entitled to say wrong things that delude people and take them astray. So there is difference between keeping silent and saying things that take people astray. So years ago, there was a famous man. His father was a famous scholar and a man of merit under the control of the Wahhabis. Even though he was in the control of the Wahhabis, he used to teach in the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca. And he used to say what Ahlul Sunnah used to say openly, without fear, such as Allah does not exist in the sky, Allah is not a body, Allah does not move, Allah cannot be imagined, Allah does not exist over the throne, Allah does not exist in a place, and the like. This is what all four Imams had the consensus of. So he used to do that openly without fear. And he also used to warn against the Wahhabis, and he used to warn against Ibn Taymiyyah by name. So he would drop the name. Ibn Taymiyyah said so and so, don't listen to Ibn Taymiyyah. So he used to say that, this man was not even a Muslim, and openly, that is, about Ibn Taymiyyah. Anyways, this man died, and because the people loved him so much, they gathered around his son. After some time, people started hearing from his son things that are not good. They said, they started hearing about him saying an Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, for example. the Imam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, right? Or about some scholars of the Wahhabi movements that they were good scholars. Or the differences with the Wahhabis between Ahl Sunnah, like it's not a big issue, it's not a big deal. Obviously, this is not true, this is blasphemy because the Wahhabis claim that Allah exists over the throne and He has attributes of the humans, even if sometimes they don't explicitly say that. So he used to say things like that. So several people advised him, they talked to him, especially the people from Indonesia and Malaysia. They used to come to the school where his father used to teach and to learn there. And after the death of his father, and the father was named Al-Wa'i Al-Maliki. So after the death of the father, they continued to come to the school to learn. But then they started to hear things that his son was saying and to reading his books, things that contained the Wahhabis' claims, right? These bad claims. So to make the story short, that is the teacher met him with Hajj Riyad and Hajj Ali. So they all told him and they wanted to talk to him and they said, we want to talk to you in private. So we sat with him and his son and Hajj Riyad and the teacher. We talked to him, that is the son that was basically making Wahhabi claims, right? And said like they told him like, why do you do these things? These people, they come to learn from you, and if they go back to their countries and they spread those ill ideas, um, you will be responsible for that. And on the day of judgment, you will have to face that consequence. So all he said was, you do not know the situation of the country where we lived. So we told him, your father lived at the same place, and they did not harm him. They did not dare to harm him. Why? Because he used to say the proper things in a brave way, and the people supported him. Because of that, if you do the same thing, then the people will support you. And let's say that you cannot be protected, that it is truly a different situation now. You can keep silent. Just keep silent. Why would you spread the wrong things pertaining to religion and the rules of the religion? So this guy, he didn't have anything to say. And at the time he said he will change, but he never did. And later he added things onto the school. So things that are not even related to the Wahhabi creed. So he went even further than that. So if you are excused sometimes not to order al-ma'ruf and forbid al-munkar, in this case, this guy was under the control of the Wahhabis, the wrong creed. So he was excused, but it doesn't mean that you are now excused and you can pervert the rules of the religion. It's better to stay quiet, just don't say anything. The Imam Ahmad, he was he was in jail at the time. So a man came to visit him where he was in jail and he was talking to him and told him like, why are you bearing all these hardships? Why don't you just keep quiet? Oh, like, why are you doing this? So I told him, go out and check, what do you see? Like, go outside the prison, what do you see? So he went and he saw many people gathered. He told them, like, what are you doing here? They said, we are waiting for Ahmed and we are waiting to hear from him to write what he says. And these were thousands of people were waiting. So he went back and told him, I saw many people waiting for you to write what you say. So he told him, do you think that I would lead astray all these people? I prefer to be killed than leading them astray. And this is the great difference between imams and swindlers. The imams truly lived for the akhirah because they knew that after death they're going to be accountable. While as people who pervert the religion, um, they're truly just living for the dunya and they fear the dunya. It's like they have forgotten about the akhirah. Yeah, Allah guide us, keep us on the path. So if you're excused sometimes not to order the ma'ruf and forbid the munkar, it does not mean that you're excused to prevent the religion. Okay, we already went over that. Okay. So the author said, to withhold the obligatory knowledge from someone Okay, one second. Okay, so the author said to withhold obligatory knowledge from someone who requests it. Explanation. If there is someone who is ready to learn the personal obligatory knowledge, then it is not permissible to fall short in teaching him this knowledge. If there are several people who are able to teach this person, this person who, the people who are able to teach him, at least one person needs to take care of this matter. Okay, so if there are several people who are able to teach this person, at least one person needs to teach this person. If there's only one person who is able to do that, then it becomes a personal obligation upon this particular person to teach him to do that. Of course, except if he has an excuse for him not to do that. So the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who is asked to teach the knowledge and he does not do it, that is when it is an obligation upon him to do that. He does not do it on the day of judgment. If he does not do it, so if he does not do it on the day of judgment, he will be branded with fire. Like you know the animals who are branded with like an iron, that's how they will be on the day of judgment. So if this person learns obligatory knowledge, then after a while he forgets it. He comes back to tell you, and he tells you, I forgot a part of it. Please teach it to me again. Then you have to do that. Or someone has to do it. He cannot be neglected. It's as if he did not learn it in the first place. So this person who wants to learn, obviously, who wants to learn, he does not reject learning, then you help him in that. Um, and the scholar said it's a personal obligation on people to teach um, those without knowledge, right? So, for example, if we are living in a town and close to us in the vicinity, there's no one that reached the level of knowledge to give fatwas. And among this, there are certain ones who have the ability. So if they put in the effort and learn, they can reach that level. But all of us, including the people who are busy in teaching the creed, so all of us, including those people who are busy in teaching the creed, because there is a lot of ignorance in the town, and so if anyone among them leaves out doing that to put effort to learn and to reach that level, no one is going to fill for him. In this case, he would be excused, or we would be excused, not to have someone reach that level of fatwa. So again, we will be excused if we do not put in that effort to reach that level. So if that makes sense. So let's say if there are 10 guys who are teaching the obligatory knowledge, three of them, if they or at least let's just say one of them, if he puts in the effort and learns, he can reach the level with like a very high scholar. But if he leaves to study, because that means he would not be teaching the people, the other nine guys, they cannot fill his students. So there would be an area that is not getting the proper creed. Let's say Islam 101. They would not be getting that. And so this guy who has the ability to reach the level of fatwa, he would be excused, and so would everybody else, because they are teaching the basics, because the basics is needed. What are the basics? Again, knowing that Allah does not exist in a place, knowing that Allah does not resemble the creation, that He's not a light, He's not darkness, right? So on and so forth. So these things take precedence because the job is to make sure that the Muslims have, not even the Muslims and other people have the proper knowledge of Allah. And so that's what comes first. And then, but if that is not, if the people are ignorant and they need that, that's what takes precedence. So they would be excused for not reaching that level of fatwa. The scholars also said that there should be an Islamic judge every half day of walking distance, which means that a person, this particular person who reaches the level of becoming a judge, he needs to have a certain level of knowledge so he can fulfill that position. Ghazali also said in each city there also has to be a scholar able to refute the people of misguidance with the mental proof and the textual proofs. So, subhanAllah, it looks like we're in the first case where, people we're in literally the land of ignorance that even the Muslims these days have a hard time figuring out what is acceptable, what are the obligations, what are the conditions for prayer. And a lot of them don't really have the knowledge, like nobody has ever told them that Allah does not exist in a place. And when istawa doesn't necessarily mean in the context of Allah to sit above, right? As we talked before, it talks about power, conjugation, submission. And those are all attributed with power. So Allah has power over the throne. Allah created it, and it's the biggest creation. And even though it's the biggest creation, it's still under the power of Allah. Okay. My God. So the author said to laugh because a Muslim passed gas, or to laugh with a purpose in a way to hurt another Muslim. So the explanation is that among the sins of the mouth is to laugh voluntarily at a Muslim because of him passing gas, and this hurts the Muslim. If one laughs at him involuntarily, then one is not sinful. Also, if one laughs on purpose in a way to hurt another Muslim, like he laughs to degrade him, to make fun of him, especially if there's people or just alone, then this is sinful. The author said to withhold testimony. Explanation. Among the things of the tongue is to hold one's testimony without excuse, but take into consideration that there are details here. So sometimes a person has to testify before a judge, whether the judge asks him to testify or not. For example, if you know for a fact someone divorced his wife 3 times, and despite that, they are still living together like husband and wife. In this case, you have to go to the judge and testify before the judge whether he asked you to do that or he did not ask you to do that. Another case, um, let's say there's a dispute between two people about money. Those two people, they go to the judge, and you are a witness that supports one of those two people's claims. In this case, you are not entitled to go and testify if this person does not ask you to do so. So, of course, we're talking about if this person knows that you are a witness. If this person goes to testify without being asked, that is the witness, the Prophet ﷺ dispraised him. The Prophet ﷺ praised the first 3 centuries, and he said that after those 3 centuries, lying and getting fat will be spread among the Muslims, and like the one testifies before being asked to testify. Basically, he was listing out not good attributes or how the Muslims would be. We don't have a Muslim judge these days, at least in the United States that I know of and in my community. But yeah. So again, there's more details here. The author said to neglect the obligatory returning, like saying wa alaikum assalam, or the Islamic salutation, assalamu alaikum. Explanation. There are certain cases when a person has to reply to the salam. If someone says to him or her, that is, if one addressed personally, then it's an obligation to him to reply the salam. It's an obligation if both parties are females or males. If someone addresses a group, at least one person has to reply. At least one has to say wa alaikum assalam. Okay, so again, it's an obligation. If me and another person are in a room, 2 girls, and she says assalamu alaikum, it's my obligation to say wa alaikum assalam. Same thing if it's 2 males. If there's a group, if I come in and there's a group like into the house and have a big family, so let's say there's 3, 4 people in the house, I say assalamu alaikum. Somebody, just one of them, has to reply wa alaikum assalam. Now, if a young woman says assalamu alaikum to a marriageable man, he is not obligated to say wa alaikum assalam, but it is permissible. Again, permissible but not an obligation. Likewise, if someone was urinating or defecating and someone says assalamu alaikum, this person is not obligated to return the salam. Again, likewise, if this person was eating. In some cases, it's disliked to say assalamu alaikum in the first place. So saying wa alaikum assalam is not obligation. So if someone who is not following the proper creed, he went astray on the level of the creed, and this person did not reach the level of blasphemy. So he is a Muslim and an enormous sinner because she's returning the creed. If he says assalamu alaikum, you are not obligated to say wa alaikum assalam. You can, but you are not obligated to say wa alaikum assalam. Some later Shafi'i scholars said it's not permissible to say assalamu alaikum to a marriageable female or to a female who is other than your mother, your sister, your wife, or the like, and this is not reliable. This does not comply with the saying of Shafi'i, and it does not comply with the sayings of the great followers of Shafi'i. Some later Shafi'i said that, and they committed a mistake by saying that. So there's a difference between saying it's not an obligation to reply back and saying it's haram to say assalamu alaikum. So there is a difference between those two cases. What the great Shafi'i scholar said, it is not an obligation to reply back if a marriageable young female says assalamu alaikum to you. They did not say it's haram for her or for you to do that. So there's a difference between the two statements. And likewise, it's not an obligation to reply back if a marriageable man says assalamu alaikum. It's not haram, but it's not an obligation to reply back. The author said to give an arousing kiss intentionally when one is in state of pilgrimage or Hajj or Umrah, or is fasting an obligatory fast if one fears ejaculation, and to kiss those whom one is not allowed to kiss. So explanation, if someone is in a state of ihram, Hajj or Umrah, he is not allowed to kiss his wife with an arousing kiss, and vice versa. And he cannot do that with other than his wife. Now, if one is fasting the obligatory fast, he is not allowed to kiss his wife with an arousing kiss if he fears ejaculation because of that. So if he does not fear ejaculation, it's permissible. If the fasting is not an obligatory fast, it's also permissible because fasting an optional fast, he's allowed to interrupt it. So it's permissible for him to do that. When we say an obligatory fast, we mean fasting during Ramadan, fasting to make up a day of Ramadan that he missed, fasting for an expiation that he has to fulfill, for a broken vow, and the like. So if he fears ejaculation, he is not entitled to do that. Likewise, he is not entitled to kiss anyone he is not entitled to kiss. I think this is clear. Yeah. So here are some questions or statements that presented at the end of the class. One of the hadith pertaining to the flute is, which means the Prophet ﷺ said, which means two sounds are damned in this dunya and in the hereafter. A flute when celebrating someone, and to wail and lamentate when a hardship occurs. That is a death of a person. This hadith is narrated by Al-Bazar, and this is one among the hadith pertaining to this issue. The teacher also said, while the khatib is giving a speech and someone says assalamu alaikum, that is for Jummah, no one responds to him. He shouldn't even do that when there is a religious class. It's not haram, but one should not do that because this distracts the people who are attending the class or the khutbah. The obesity, the fatness mentioned in the hadith, what's meant by it is the fatness out of eating a lot. Because some people can be on medications, and as a consequence, their body just works different. Allahu alam. But the one out of eating a lot, this is the dispraised one. When one is reciting Al-Quran, if one says Assalamu alaikum to him, some scholars said he is not obligated to say Wa alaikum assalam. Okay, and that's it. Again, if you have any questions, just please let me know. Let us say تتهلين الصلاة على النبي. لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. بارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم.